Anton Corbijn on Squaring the Circle, The Story of Hipgnosis. Their incredible album covers. And Kurt Cobain, Sundance 2023. The director also discusses his favorite album covers, the documentary's theatrical release date, and reveals his next feature film. From Dutch director and photographer Anton Corbijn, Squaring the Circle, The Story of Hipgnosis, tells the history behind Storm Thorgerson and Aubrey Poe Howell, the creative minds behind one of the most iconic design studios in musical history, Hipgnosis. No stranger to the musical frontier, Corbijn has worked with numerous influential artists, namely Depeche Mode, U2, The Killers, and many others, as well as directed a number of notable music videos, including Nirvana's and Quat, Heart-Shaped Box, and Quat. Though Squaring the Circle is Corbijn's first feature-length doc, he's manned the director's chair for films like 2007's Control and The American, starring George Clooney. Squaring the Circle includes archived audio of the late Thorgerson discussing how the once dilapidated building on Dean Street in London progressed through the counterculture of the 60s and 70s. As well as tons of new interviews from rock legends like Pink Floyd's Roger Waters and David Gilmour, Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, and Paul McCartney, among others. Poe, who Corbijn reveals was a driving factor in getting this story to the screen, joins the conversation, recalling specific album design concepts and discussions. Corbijn's documentary allows Poe and the artists to reminisce and tell their origin story from a time when the political atmosphere, hallucinogenic drugs, and the freedom of expression heavily influenced music. With Squaring the Circle, The Story of Hipgnosis, celebrating its world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival, Anton Corbijn took a moment to stop by the Collider studio presented by Saratoga Springwater in Park City to speak with editor-in-chief, Steve Weintraub. Corbijn gives us a rundown of his career as a film director, his work with a number of iconic musical artists, and what first inspired him to pick up a camera. He teases a few of the wild stories featured in Squaring the Circle about how Hipgnosis pulled off classic album sleeve covers, including, but not limited to, Sheep. The documentary's theatrical release date, a personal story about Kurt Cobain, and a few of his favorite album covers. For all of this and more, check out the interview in the video above, or you can read the full transcript below. Collider, I love your work, and I'm so happy that you're here in the studio for your documentary. I have a million questions for you, but I first want to say congrats for being part of Sundance this year. Anton Corbijn. Cheers. I'm very happy to be here. So your resume is fantastic. You've directed feature films, you've done a doc, and you've directed tons of music videos. If someone has never seen anything that you've done before, what is the first thing you'd like them to watch, and why? Corbijn. Oh, well, obviously I'm also a photographer for 50 years now. So there's that. Also, you've done album covers. I was more aiming at things that they could watch. Corbijn. Okay, well, music video-wise, there are probably about 100 videos that I did. A lot of Depeche Mode. Nirvana is quite popular in America. Heart-Shaped Box, it's one of my favorites. Coldplay, The Killers, and that stuff. Then movies, I guess start with the first one, which is Control. It is a film about the singer of a band called Joy Division who I knew. So it was the only way I dared to make a movie because I knew a lot about it. I am curious, with your feature films, including the documentary, which one changed the most in the editing room in ways that you did not expect? Corbijn. Yeah. Good question. I guess the documentary because you're not in charge the whole time. I'm in charge of the stuff I shoot. But we had to use so much archival footage which has to be found and put in there, and the editor, Andrew Hume, is fantastic. He was also the editor for Control and for The American. So, I knew we were gonna get a good movie out of it. Squaring the Circle, the story of Hipgnosis. Most people watching this right now will not have seen the movie yet. Corbijn, or know what Hipgnosis is. Exactly. So how have you been explaining to friends and family what the documentary is about? Corbijn. Well, usually I keep it broader and say it's about album sleeve designers from the 70s, which is when album sleeves became a force. In the 80s, of course, we got CDs, so the album sleeve sort of deteriorated, and the art with it. But it's focused really on two guys. They formed a company called Hipgnosis, and they were at school with Pink Floyd. And so they started with Pink Floyd, the first album, and they did all the albums for Pink Floyd. So most people know one or two of these albums, at least. Yeah, they're responsible for some of the most iconic images in rock history, and especially anything that people have seen in the 70s, they most likely did it. Corbijn. Yeah. For me, I always like the most straightforward photography. So, for the Pink Floyd or Peter Gabriel sleeves, the more straightforward the photography in a way. But they were very clever. Before we had all the intricate things we can do now on the computer, they did it with a knife and glue, and pieces of paper. They made really incredible collages and made the impossible possible. I have to ask you, what was it that said, "Oh my God, I want to make this, I want to tell this story"? Corbijn. Well, to be honest, I was asked to do it by Aubrey Powell, who's the surviving member of Hipgnosis, and Poe's as you see in the film, a very good salesman. So he sold the concept to me. He came to Amsterdam, where I live, and I said I'd do it. Because, obviously, I only photograph because I love music so much. It was the only reason for me to pick up a camera, because I wanted to be closer to the music. It's very simple beginnings, as a fan shooting people on stage and all that. But I became a portrait photographer in the end. After wanting to publish in magazines, the next and the highest level that I could think of at the time was doing record sleeves. So I looked at the record sleeves from the late 60s, and that was exactly when Hipgnosis started. One of the things about the documentary is, you have Poe, who is able to talk, but there's not a lot of footage from back then in their office working. So what was it like for you when you decided, okay, I'm gonna do this, but there are really limited assets to pull from in the 70s? Corbijn. Absolutely, and I had no idea what I said yes to, in a way. I jumped into it. As you can see in the film, the stuff with Poe is all my stuff, and the interviews with the Pink Floyd guys, Peter Gabriel, and Paul McCartney, all that stuff came from me. But all the other stuff, We were searching and searching to find stuff that looked